So like every day, I'm hoping for a little bit of color in the sunset. And so I'm just right down the street from home. But today's video is going to be a little bit different than normal. So I'm actually not just out here to photograph sunset. I thought it would be a good chance to talk about some of the photo news I've been reading. And I wanted to get out of the office to do it. I'm going to start with the long lens today. But if things get interesting, I might switch to a wider angle. We'll see. So I wouldn't be lying if I said that news in the last couple of weeks has been rather slim. You know, not a lot going on. You've got the Z9, coming out from Nikon. We'll get that announcement, which there's a video on my channel about that. You've got the Sony FX3 finally announced officially. But I'm a Canon shooter. I'm on the EOS R here. I'm on the R6 right here, and the Canon news has been kind of light, which is what I look at pretty closely. But this week, a little bit into last week, we got a lot of new info. So I kind of wanted to go over that just a little bit and talk about it, and then get your thoughts down in the comments about what you think about some of the stuff that's coming out while I compose these shots. So first off, we heard this week we were going to get 2 brand new cameras, and the serial numbers, the kind of the product numbers that were associated with them were more what we normally see in like the Steady Shot and EOS M line. So all of a sudden we thought we were going to get like new micro, like new mini cameras, maybe a new EOS M, M7, M6 Mark III, something crazy, and we ended up. Or a new power shot, and we ended up getting these like PTZ cameras, these like 4K PTZ cameras that are for, I guess security. I've used PTZ cameras in my 9-to-5 job, and they're very uninteresting. So just weird. There was like a flash for a minute where we thought we were going to get so much cool stuff. So I've got a link down in the description for the info on those cameras. I don't think anybody who watches my channel is super excited for vari-angle security shell cameras. And then just like yesterday, we got this news that we're going to be getting a firmware update to the EOS R5, R6, and the 1DX Mark III. And this firmware update has been, I think, rumored for quite some time. It seems that it's finally coming. Maybe there was some bugs, or they were just waiting for the market to settle down a little bit. But some long-awaited features being added. Number one, we should be getting light RAW for the cinema RAW light for the 1DX Mark III, as well as the R5. Also on the compression side of things, there should be new 4K compression options for both the R5 and the R6. No news if that means that we're going to get the all-eye compression on the R6. I'm shooting on the R6 right now with the IPB compression. For those of you who don't know, IPB versus all-eye, it just means that more of the video is compressed. It means that you end up getting a lower quality, though still very good, lower quality video output on IPB versus all-eye. And while I might still shoot in IPB in a lot of instances, having both options is nice, and having both options on the R5 is nice, but some lower bitrate compression options coming to the R5, and some other options coming to the R6, though we don't know exactly 100% what. Sunset is always a lot earlier here than the forecast predicts because of all these mountains that we have in the west, but we're getting some really cool kind of light effects as it bounces off the clouds. Now, in addition to having these new options for compression, we're also going to be getting C-Log version 3 on both the EOS R5 and the EOS R6. The reason that that's really important is that if you're using these cameras as a secondary camera to something like a C300 or any of the other cinema line cameras where you might be shooting in C-Log 3 for the best dynamic range available, the most flexibility in post-production color grading, you want to be able to match those. And it's very difficult to match when you're using the standard C-Log that's based in this camera now, or actually that camera now, when you go in to do post. But having those matched is going to be huge, and it will be an upgrade for both the R6 and the R5 to have this improved color grading functionality. So now, in addition to having these additional codecs now available, as well as this new C-Log function on the R5 and R6, we're also going to be getting, on the EOS R5, the ability to finally shoot 1080p 120. This feature has been available in MJPEG on the 1DX Mark II, as well as on the 5D Mark IV. So this is not a new feature necessarily to Canon cameras, but the R5 shoots in 4K 120 at 120 frames per second, and those files can be pretty big. So it can be rather difficult to shoot, and you cannot shoot them to anything other than a CF Express card. So if you're not using CF Express, if you're still shooting to SD cards, or if you're looking for something that's a little bit easier to edit and manipulate post-processing wise, maybe just pushing it out to the web, having the ability to shoot in full HD at 120 frames per second will give you some more flexibility. It's a great feature. The R6 has it. It was kind of confusing that the R5 didn't come with it on day one, but now they're finally fixing that problem. The last thing that I wanted to mention is it looks like we're going to be getting, and this is pretty good on the list of things to expect this year, is a C variant of the EOS R5. Similar to the FX3 that we saw from Sony, which is a variant of the A7S III, this will take an existing camera, like in this case the R5, and modify it. They're going to make the body a little bit bigger, going to make it a little bit easier to manage with cinema rigs. It will of course come with, C-Log 3, just like the updates to the R5 and the R6, and it will likely have additional jacks and options similar to what we saw in the FX3. And to allow it to film in a more cinema environment, unlike the R5, it will likely come with an internal fan solution to keep it cool, so that you can run those 4K and potentially 8K shoots for longer periods of time. No word if it's going to have any sort of a modification to the sensor outside of what I've described, the body and the added fan, and also no word as to whether or not Canon is going to be removing that 30-minute record limit. Hopefully they will. Hopefully we see that in the R5 and the R6, but I didn't see that listed as a potential for this upcoming firmware update. So seeing a cinema camera coming out of Canon that is modeled after an existing mirrorless, I think they've probably had this in the works for a while. We've been hearing about it, but I think maybe the FX3 had them kind of turn up the timeline just a little bit. I don't know. We'll see hopefully soon with some more information there, maybe even by the summer. I have to talk about the other bit of Canon news that hit the wires last week, which is the rumored specifications of the EOS R1 or the R1X, or whatever we're going to end up calling it, but the replacement of the 1DX Mark III in a mirrorless R body with an RF mount. A lot of people were expecting this camera would be coming out with a 20 to 24 megapixel sensor, great autofocus, lots of features, big weather sealed body, super fast, 30, 40, 50 frames per second, right? Well, the information that we got was a little strange. It indicated 85 megapixels, which is a bit of a stretch, that it would shoot 20 to 30 frames per second, but 40 frames a second in like a cut down 20 megapixel variant, that it would have quad pixel autofocus versus dual pixel autofocus or dual pixel autofocus version 2, that it would have 15 plus stops of dynamic range, in this 85 megapixel sensor, that it would have 1.6 million top-end ISO, and that it would cost like $9,000. Yeah, I don't think that's real. I think there's parts of that are real. Quad pixel AF, sure. A higher megapixel sensor that allows you to kind of cut down and have faster bursts, sure. A stacked sensor, maybe, but jumping 3 or 4 generations ahead in terms of what we have now, I don't think we're gonna see from Canon. Maybe in a couple of generations or a generation or two, we'll see something like that. Maybe, if that's the direction that they're going. Everybody seems to think that the Sony announcement of the A1 is just kind of throwing the industry into chaos. But really, I mean, even though it is a great camera, Canon has great cameras and great features, and it's great to see competition, but this doesn't sound real to me. If you care anything about the photography that I'm doing here with this sunset, just so you know, I am shooting at f11, and right now I'm actually shooting 3 different exposures, and I'm gonna bracket and blend those in probably when I'm done. ISO 100, of course. Variable shutter speeds, and right now, because I'm on my super lightweight carbon tripod that has a bit of a jiggle to it, I've got a 2-second timer on there. So it doesn't look like we're gonna get the kind of color that I was hoping for, but it doesn't mean that there weren't some really interesting cloud formations. Just some fun stuff, just really kind of interesting. A lot of wind whipping those clouds around, so that's nice. Just a quick plug for the Alpenglow app. Just a cool app that I use that alerts me when there's going to be a good sunset, and that tells me a little bit about what the potential for color is, and also tells you times of stuff like golden hour and that sort of thing. If you actually look down into the south here, you can see there's actually quite a bit of color. But because of the way that Las Vegas is really kind of designed as this valley, we get a lot of these kind of lower clouds that block a lot of the light. And then also we've got mountains in the west that are pretty high. They're very prominent mountains, and they have a tendency to really kind of block out cool sunsets. So normally we look south and we see the cool stuff. So if you're down over by the border of Nevada, California, or if you're down in Arizona, sometimes you get some really cool sunsets, but not so much for us. But check out the app, it's very cool. I'm sure it will work great for you in your area. The other app that I use a lot of is, it's called Clear Outside, and it just gives me and I don't know if this app's been updated in a while, but it gives me a list hour by hour of what the percentage of clouds are going to be and kind of where they're going to be. So for right now, it said that we'd have about 70% medium cloud and 84% high cloud, which is about right. The high clouds are what you want for good sunsets along with color, and the medium clouds, unfortunately, in this case, blocked it. Although sometimes you can get some really cool sunsets with medium clouds. And then also I use a combination of the Weather Underground app and Dark Sky to kind of look for other weather patterns. When you're searching for cool sunrises and sunsets, sometimes you have to become like an amateur meteorologist to try and chase down cool stuff. This night is getting cold and dark, so I'm gonna pack it up, and I will see you in the next one. Thanks.